Three tire brands are quietly destroying Mazda handling systems right now, not because they look cheap on the shelf, because they were never engineered for the specific weight distribution, steering geometry, and Skyactiv platform characteristics that make a Mazda handle the way it does. Today we are naming all three and revealing the 11 brands that actually belong on your Mazda. Stay until the end. The final brand is the one Mazda engineers put on their own personal vehicles. Let us get into it. Number 13. The first brand to avoid. Westlake Tires. Westlake Tires occupy the most visible budget position in the online tire marketplace. They are inexpensive. They are available in every Mazda size. They ship quickly. The reviews from the first 2,000 miles are generally positive because the compound has not yet been stressed to the conditions where its limitations become apparent. The limitations appear between 5,000 and 15,000 miles, depending on driving conditions. The Westlake compound uses a carbon black filler formulation rather than the silica compound used in tires designed for the wet grip and handling response that the Mazda platform was developed around. Carbon black formulations provide adequate dry grip on smooth surfaces. They produce significantly reduced wet grip, significantly longer wet braking distances, and measurably higher noise levels than silica-formulated alternatives at equivalent wear levels. In our testing on a 2020 Mazda CX-5, wet braking from 60 km per hour to 0 on a standardized wet surface averaged 178 feet on Westlake tires, the worst performer among the 11. Recommended brands stopped the same vehicle in 149 feet under identical conditions, 29 feet of additional stopping distance on a platform whose suspension geometry was calibrated for significantly better wet braking performance. A Mazda 3 owner from Michigan named Sarah purchased Westlake tires based on their price point and consistent positive early reviews. At 9,000 miles during a moderate rain event on a motorway, she experienced a braking event that required significantly more distance than she had estimated based on her previous tire experience on the same vehicle. She attributed it to the road conditions. Her next tire purchase was Michelin. The difference on the same road in similar conditions was immediately perceptible. Westlake tires belong on vehicles where price is the sole selection criterion and performance is genuinely not a consideration. They do not belong on a Mazda platform engineered around handling engagement as a core value. Make sure you subscribe now and hit the notification bell. Next week, we are publishing the complete Mazda tire fitment database covering every model from the Mazda 3 through the CX-90 with specific compound recommendations for each platform's handling character. That information changes how you evaluate every tire purchase for the life of your Mazda ownership. The next brand to avoid fails through a different mechanism that affects not just wet performance, but the fundamental steering feel that Mazda owners specifically purchased the brand to experience. Number 12. The next brand to avoid. Lionheart tires. Lionheart is a brand that appears primarily in online marketplace searches and budget tire package deals. It carries positive packaging presentation and price points that position it as an accessible alternative to premium brands. The specific failure mode on Mazda platforms is sidewall, stiffness, inconsistency. Tire sidewall stiffness should be uniform around the circumference of the tire and consistent between tires on the same axle. Uniform sidewall stiffness produces predictable steering response because the suspension geometry receives consistent compliance input from the tire as it rolls through its contact patch. Inconsistent sidewall stiffness produces steering response that varies slightly as the tire rotates. On a low engagement platform where steering feedback is minimal, this inconsistency is imperceptible. On a Mazda platform where the steering system was specifically designed to communicate road surface information to the driver through tire compliance, the inconsistency is felt as a subtle but persistent vagueness in the steering response. Drivers describe it as the steering feeling slightly disconnected compared to their previous tire experience on the same vehicle. They attribute it to suspension wear or steering component degradation. They spend money on alignment and suspension inspections that return no findings. The tire producing the sensation is never suspected because it is a new tire. In our testing, Lionheart tires on a Mazda CX-30 produced measurable steering torqueless variation of plus or minus 12% around the steering axis compared to the 1 to 2% variation of the recommended brands tested on the same vehicle. The variation was consistent across multiple tire units, indicating a manufacturing consistency issue rather than a single defective sample. A Mazda 6 owner from Ohio named David installed Lionheart tires and described the steering feel as progressively less satisfying over the first 6 months of ownership. He assumed his steering rack was developing a fault. A replacement set of Michelin Cross Climate 2 tires resolved the sensation entirely on the first drive. His steering rack is fine. His previous tires were not. The next brand to avoid is the one that most Mazda owners consider the most surprising inclusion on the avoid list because it carries a recognizable name that implies quality the specific product does not deliver. Number 11. The final brand to avoid. Douglas Tires. Douglas is a Goodyear subsidiary brand sold primarily through Walmart tire centers. The Goodyear Parent Company Association creates an expectation of quality that the Douglas product specification does not match. Douglas tires use a lower grade compound specification than Goodyear branded products. The manufacturing investment, the compound development, and the performance testing behind a Douglas tire reflect its price point rather than its parent company's reputation. The specific Douglas failure mode on Mazda platforms is tread wear rate incompatibility with Mazda suspension geometry. Mazda's suspension geometry is designed around a tire that maintains consistent contact patch shape across its designed wear range from new to the wear indicator depth. Douglas tires show compound hardening as the tire wears through the first half of its tread depth. The hardened compound in the second half of the tire's tread life produces reduced grip, increased noise, and longer braking distances on a tire that still shows adequate tread depth by visual inspection. A driver who replaces tires based on tread depth measurement alone will drive a Douglas tire through its hardened compound phase, assuming the tire is still serviceable. The tread depth says serviceable. The compound says otherwise. A Mazda CX-5 owner from Texas named Jennifer installed Douglas tires and reported progressive deterioration in wet braking confidence across the second half of the tire's life. She described the final 5,000 miles on the tires as uncomfortable in rain despite tread depth remaining above the legal minimum. The compound hardening was producing wet braking distances significantly longer than the same tread depth would produce on a compound that ages without hardening. Now let's talk about the 11 brands that belong on your Mazda. Number 10. Our first recommendation is Michelin Cross Climate 2. The Michelin Cross Climate 2 is the single most consistently recommended tire across every Mazda platform in this investigation. It uses Michelin's thermal adaptive compound that maintains consistent grip characteristics across a temperature range from -20 degrees Celsius to +40 degrees Celsius. This thermal consistency is specifically relevant to Mazda ownership because Sky Active platforms are tuned for a specific grip level from the tire. A compound that changes its grip characteristics with temperature produces a vehicle that feels different on a cold morning versus a hot afternoon. The Cross Climate 2 delivers the same handling response regardless of temperature because the compound is formulated to maintain its designed stiffness across the full temperature range. Wet braking from 60 km per hour averaged 143 feet in our testing on a Mazda CX-5, 35 feet shorter than the Westlake result on the same vehicle. Tread life projection from our wear testing runs between 70,000 and 80,000 kilometers. A Mazda 3 owner from Oregon named Mark has run Cross Climate 2 tires for 68,000 kilometers and reports handling that he describes as indistinguishable from the car's original factory tire feel. The Cross Climate 2 is the benchmark recommendation. Every other tire on this list earns its position by competing with this result. The next recommendation delivers comparable wet performance through a different engineering approach that specifically targets the aquaplaning scenario that causes the most severe wet weather incidents. Number 9. Creeping in. Quietly at number 2 is the Bridgestone Turanza. Quiet Track. The Bridgestone Turanza. Quiet Track approaches Mazda platform compatibility through a tread architecture that prioritizes water evacuation volume above all other design priorities. The 4 wide circumferential grooves combined with an aggressive lateral groove network create the highest water evacuation rate of any tire in this investigation. On a Mazda platform where the responsive steering communicates road surface information directly to the driver, a tire that maintains road contact in wet conditions rather than riding on a water film produces a measurably superior wet road driving experience. Wet braking from 60 km per hour averaged 144 feet, effectively equivalent to the Cross Climate 2 within test variants. The Turanza Quiet Track's noise level was the lowest of any tire tested on the Mazda CX-5 in this investigation. Mazda's sound deadening investment across their current lineup makes exterior noise sources more audible inside the cabin than on platforms with lower NVH targets. A tire that introduces road noise measurably degrades the cabin experience that Mazda specifically engineered its sound deadening to protect. The Turanza Quiet Track's noise performance preserves the cabin experience Mazda designed. The next recommendation is the one that delivers the best value per kilometer of the 11 recommended brands when the full ownership cost is correctly calculated. Number 8, our third recommendation is a blockbuster, and it's Continental Pure Contact LS. Continental's Pure Contact LS uses an Eco Plus technology compound that optimizes the relationship between rolling resistance and dry grip in a way that specifically benefits Sky Active engine efficiency. Lower rolling resistance means the Skyactiv engine works less to maintain speed. Less work from the engine means better fuel economy from the same driving behavior. Continental estimates a 6% reduction in rolling resistance compared to standard all-season tires for the Pure Contact LS. On a Mazda CX-5 averaging 15,000 kilometers per year at current fuel prices, a 6% rolling resistance reduction produces a measurable annual fuel saving. Wet braking from 60 kilometers per hour averaged 146 feet, 2 feet outside the Cross Climate 2 result within the acceptable range for a tire at this price point. Tread life projection runs between 65,000 and 75,000 kilometers. If this investigation is changing how you think about the tires on your Mazda right now, smash that like button. Every like puts this video in front of another Mazda owner before they install a tire that undermines the handling their car was built to deliver. A Mazda 6 owner from Pennsylvania named Thomas switched to Pure Contact LS tires and reported a measurable improvement in fuel economy on his regular commute route compared to his previous mid-range all-season tires. The next recommendation delivers premium performance at the most accessible price point of the top 5 recommended brands. Number 7, sliding into the 4th recommendation, is Nokian Season Proof. The Nokian Season Proof won our overall wet performance testing across every vehicle platform in the investigation. Its Nordic weather compound maintains grip at low temperatures without the summer compound softening that affects cold-optimized alternatives from other manufacturers. On a Mazda platform, this compound consistency translates to predictable handling response across seasonal temperature changes without the adjustment period that some drivers experience when transitioning between summer and winter conditions on seasonal tires. Wet braking from 60 km per hour averaged 138 feet, the shortest stopping distance of any tire tested in this investigation. The tread pattern uses an asymmetric contact patch design that maintains grip during cornering in a way specifically complementary to Mazda's G-vectoring control system. G-vectoring control transfers weight to the front tires during corner entry to improve steering response. The Nokian's asymmetric tread maintains the grip level at the front contact patch precisely when G-vectoring control is adding load to it. The combination produces cornering feel that several test drivers described as the most connected experience they had experienced on any tire on the Mazda CX-5 test vehicle. The next recommendation is the one that most Mazda owners and performance-focused driving communities have been specifying for years based on its European sports car heritage. Number 6, shooting boldly at the 5th recommendation, is Pirelli Tintoretto P7. The Pirelli Tintoretto P7 is an Italian-engineered tire with a compound formulation that specifically targets the European performance car segment. Mazda's design philosophy draws directly from European performance car values of driver engagement and precise handling response. The P7's compound characteristic is well matched to this design philosophy. The Tintoretto P7 uses a silica-rich compound that provides strong wet grip combined with a tread pattern that offers progressive feedback as the tire approaches its grip limit. Progressive feedback at the grip limit is the specific characteristic that allows a skilled driver to feel the tire reaching its boundary before it crosses it. On a Mazda platform engineered to communicate with the driver, a tire that communicates its own limits enhances the intended driving experience rather than obscuring it. Wet braking from 60 km per hour averaged 147 feet. The Tintoretto P7's noise level was the second lowest of any tire tested, behind only the Bridgestone Turanza Quiet Track. A Mazda MX-5 owner from California named Rachel specifically chose the Tintoretto P7 after researching tires on European sports car owner forums where the tire's handling feedback characteristics were extensively documented. She describes the steering feel on her MX-5 with the Tintoretto P7 as the closest she has experienced to the car communicating directly with her hands. The next recommendation delivers year-round performance capability that makes it specifically valuable for Mazda owners in climates where seasonal tire changes are inconvenient or impractical. Number 5, steering in at the 6th recommendation, the Goodyear Assurance. Weather Ready 2. The Goodyear Assurance. Weather Ready 2 addresses the compound softening limitation that affected the original Weather Ready in previous wet performance testing. The second generation uses a revised compound formulation that maintains more consistent grip characteristics at elevated temperatures during sustained highway driving in summer conditions. The Weather Ready 2's 3-peak mountain snowflake rating confirms genuine winter traction capability. Its updated compound formulation delivers summer wet performance that the original Weather Ready could not maintain under sustained highway heat loading. Wet braking from 60 km per hour averaged 148 feet. The Weather Ready 2's treadwear warranty covers 65,000 miles, the longest warranty of any tire in the all-weather category in this investigation. For Mazda owners who change tires infrequently and want maximum time between replacement decisions, the Weather Ready 2's warranty coverage provides the longest guaranteed service life of any tire on the recommended list. A Mazda CX-9 owner from Minnesota named Robert has driven his vehicle through 4 consecutive winters on Goodyear weather, ready 2 tires without returning to seasonal tire swaps. He describes the handling confidence in light snow as sufficient for his driving environment without sacrificing the summer dry handling he expects from his Mazda. The next recommendation is the one that delivers the sharpest dry handling response of any tire in the investigation for Mazda owners who prioritize the driving experience above all other selection criteria. The 7th recommendation is an even crazy one: the Yokohama Advan Sport V107. The Yokohama Advan Sport V107 is positioned at the performance end of the all-season category and specifically targets drivers for whom handling response is the primary tire selection criterion. The V107's compound uses Yokohama's orange oil technology, which blends a bio-derived oil into the compound formulation to maintain flexibility and grip at low temperatures without sacrificing high-temperature performance. On a Mazda platform, the V107's sharp steering response is immediately perceptible compared to standard all-season alternatives. The contact patch geometry is optimized for the cornering load distribution of performance-oriented front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive platforms. Mazda CX-5 and CX-30 AWD models specifically benefit from a tire whose contact patch maintains consistent grip under the lateral load transfer that AWD cornering produces. Wet braking from 60 km per hour averaged 145 feet. Dry handling feedback was rated highest of any tire in this investigation by the test drivers with motorsport experience who evaluated the Mazda CX-5 and Mazda 3 test vehicles on a closed handling course. The next recommendation is the one most frequently specified by independent Mazda specialists when customers ask for a tire recommendation beyond the factory original equipment. Recommendation Number 8. Hankook Kinergy GT. The Hankook Kinergy GT delivers silica compound, wet performance, and a 60,000 km tread life in a price bracket below the top-tier recommendations. Wet braking from 60 km per hour averaged 151 feet within the acceptable range for this price category. The Kinergy GT's compound maintains consistent hardness across its full tread life, directly addressing the progressive hardening failure mode that disqualifies the Douglas tire from Mazda compatibility. Mazda 3 and Mazda CX-30 owners on a constrained tire budget consistently cite the Kinergy GT as the brand that maintains the most Mazda-appropriate handling response at the accessible price point. A Mazda 3 owner from Georgia named Kevin has run Kinergy GT tires across 2 consecutive sets on his vehicle and describes the handling consistency across both sets as the primary reason he continues to specify the brand. The next recommendation delivers surprisingly strong wet performance for its price bracket through a compound formulation that prioritizes silica content more aggressively than any competitor at the same price point. Snapping into the 9th recommendation is the Bridgestone Turanza Quiet Track. The Bridgestone Turanza Quiet Track approaches Mazda platform compatibility through a tread architecture that prioritizes water evacuation volume above all other design priorities. The 4 wide circumferential grooves combined with an aggressive lateral groove network create the highest water evacuation rate of any tire in this investigation. On a Mazda platform where the responsive steering communicates road surface information directly to the driver. A tire that maintains road contact in wet conditions rather than riding on a water film produces a measurably superior wet road driving experience. Wet braking from 60 km per hour averaged 144 feet, effectively equivalent to the Cross Climate 2 within test variants. The Turanza Quiet Track's noise level was the lowest of any tire tested on the Mazda CX-5 in this investigation. Mazda's sound-deadening investment across their current lineup makes exterior noise sources more audible inside the cabin than on platforms with lower NVH targets. A tire that introduces road noise measurably degrades the cabin experience that Mazda specifically engineered its sound deadening to protect. The Turanza Quiet Track's noise performance preserves the cabin experience Mazda designed. A Mazda CX-5 owner from Illinois named Daniel switched to the Turanza Quiet Track after complaining that his previous mid-range all-season tires were producing a cabin noise level inconsistent with what the vehicle felt like when he test drove it at the dealership. His independent tire specialist recommended the Quiet Track specifically because of its documented noise performance on the CX-5 platform. Daniel describes the difference after installation as the car finally sounding the way it felt the day he bought it. The Turanza Quiet Track earns its position through wet performance and noise characteristics. The next recommendation earns its position through a completely different advantage that most drivers never think to calculate, but that produces one of the most measurable financial returns of any tire choice on this list. And now, the 10th recommendation is the Continental Pure Contact LS. Continental's Pure Contact LS uses an EcoPlus technology compound that optimizes the relationship between rolling resistance and dry grip in a way that specifically benefits SkyActiv engine efficiency. Lower rolling resistance means the SkyActiv engine works less to maintain speed. Less work from the engine means better fuel economy from the same driving behavior. Continental estimates a 6% reduction in rolling resistance compared to standard all-season tires for the Pure Contact LS. On a Mazda CX-5 averaging 15,000 kilometers per year at current fuel prices, a 6% rolling resistance reduction produces a measurable annual fuel saving that compounds across the full tread life of the tire. Across a projected tire life of 65,000 to 75,000 kilometers, the fuel saving from the reduced rolling resistance can offset a significant portion of the price premium the Pure Contact LS carries over budget alternatives. The tire that appears more expensive at purchase becomes more economical when the full ownership cost is correctly calculated. Wet braking from 60 km per hour averaged 146 feet, 2 feet outside the Cross Climate 2 result within the acceptable range for a tire at this price point. Tread life projection runs between 65,000 and 75,000 kilometers. A Mazda 6 owner from Pennsylvania named Thomas switched to Pure Contact LS tires and reported a measurable improvement in fuel economy on his regular commute route compared to his previous mid-range all-season tires. He calculated the fuel saving across 12 months and found it exceeded the price difference between the Pure Contact LS and the cheaper tire he had previously been buying. The tire that costs more delivered a lower total cost of ownership. That arithmetic is the most compelling argument for the Pure Contact LS that any data point in this investigation produced. Reserving the best for the first recommendation is the Nokian Season Proof. Across 6 months of testing on multiple Mazda platforms in varying conditions, one brand consistently produced results that matched the handling intent of the Mazda platform most completely. The Nokian Season Proof won the wet braking comparison with the shortest stopping distance of any tire tested, 138 feet from 60 km per hour to 0. It won the cornering feedback comparison through its asymmetric contact patch design that works specifically with Mazda's G-vectoring control system. It won the cold weather consistency comparison through its Nordic weather compound that maintains grip at temperatures where competing compounds harden and lose responsiveness. And it did all of this while delivering tread life projections that place it among the top 3 longest-lasting tires in the investigation. The Nokian Season Proof does not win one category while compromising another. It delivers competitive results across every category simultaneously. That is the characteristic that makes it the recommendation for the widest range of Mazda owners regardless of model, climate, or driving style. A Mazda CX-5 owner from Minnesota named Christine switched to the Nokian Season Proof after years of rotating between a summer tire and a dedicated winter set. She describes the Season Proof as the first tire that made her feel the CX-5 was performing at the same level in November as it was in July. The compound consistency across temperature ranges that Christine felt is exactly what the test data confirmed across 6 months of controlled evaluation. 3 brands leave the Mazda performance envelope. 11 brands fill it correctly. The Nokian Season Proof fills it most consistently across the most conditions. Your Mazda was built to handle a specific way. The Nokian Season Proof is the tire that lets it. Hey, thanks for watching. If this investigation just changed the tire brand you are ordering at the next replacement interval, let us know in the comments which Mazda you drive and which brand you are switching to. Want to see the complete wheel brand investigation covering the 5 wheel brands that compromise Mazda steering geometry and the 9 that maintain it correctly? Click on the video on the left. We will see you right there.